Hey, what is going on, Dave? What is up, man?
How you doing, Joe?
Man, I'm doing good. Doing good. It's starting to get warm outside, and it's bringing brightness into my eyes to where I can't stop smiling right now. So I'm enjoying this part of the season. For me, this is the best part of the year. I love the spring. I'm not a cold weather person. And I don't necessarily like the fall, even though the temperatures are cooler, just because it's going right into the winter. So what about you? How are you doing?
It's another beautiful balmy day in southern Arizona.
Okay.
Spring is, again, like you said, one of my favorite times
Yep.
of the year out here. So,
All right. So I know I kind of had a little bit longer intro, but I want to welcome everyone back to the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. Me and Dave want to invite you listeners and as well as you viewers to our podcast. So if this is your first time, welcome. Today we're going to talk a little bit about lifelong learning and what that really means. So I'll go ahead and start. I'll kick it off. And for me, I like to change the terms, especially with this podcast, because, I think most of us are lifelong learners to some degree. But for me, I like to use the term intentional, because like I say, you learn things for your job, you learn things to get to the next level in a lot of cases. But for me, it becomes that intentional lifelong learning where you're studying to earn your doctorate degree, or you're studying to be better at your job. You're seeking out knowledge. You're seeking out learning, and that's why I like to call it intentional. Being in the military, both me and Dave, there was levels of uh, professional military education that you had to take. So that's why I'd like to say more intentional, because are you doing above and beyond what the minimum requirement is, or the expectation for whatever that role that you're doing, or whatever you're doing at that time? So that's why I like to think of lifelong learning as an intentional journey that, for me started back, I've said this many times, back in 2005 when I went back to school. But even before that, I'd always dabbled in learning something else. Me and Dave kind of touched on before we got on the air, learning how to start to do a podcast. Neither one of us had done a podcast before. So that was part of that intentional learning how to do something different. So I know I rambled a little bit on the intro. So Dave, what is your take on lifelong learning?
yeah, thanks, Joe. The lifelong learning isn't just necessarily about formal education. To your point,
Yep.
it is lifelong learning, and when you make that intentional lifelong learning, again, it's about a perspective, a change in perspective, and kind of opening your mind to what's really going on around you. For me, lifelong learning, uh, uh, intentional lifelong learning, didn't really start till I was in the military. As I've mentioned in a few of the podcasts before, I wasn't the greatest student in elementary and high school. Not by any stretch of the words was I a good student.
Right.
So, so to your point, when you get in the military, you do have to intentionally learn, but the lifelong aspect of that comes from the choice to learn, and
Right.
that can
Yep.
be, a hobby can be in lifelong learning and intentional lifelong learning, because you find something that you enjoy doing and you pursue it, whether it's
Right.
art or
Yep.
sports, or maybe you like working on your car or fixing up your house or painting or crafts and hobbies, whatever, podcasting, social media. Those are
Right.
all hobbies that we learn, and we choose to learn if we choose to learn them.
Right.
And
Right.
so I wanted to, let our viewers understand that it's not just about a formal education, although it could be,
Right.
to your point, formal certifications, formal education, with college degrees, or maybe it's about getting a license for something like real
Right. Yep.
estate, or law enforcement license is a part of getting into your law enforcement training. So there's all kinds of different licenses and certifications, formal and informal learning. And that's what intentional life learning is to me. Whenever you go online and or talk to people or go to the library, you are essentially, in all essence, doing research to understand how to do something better, whether it's communication, whether it's how to find a book in the library, as
Right.
antiquated as that can be.
Right.
So all these things are forms of lifelong learning.
Right. Yeah. And so you touched on, and we've told our story before, but you touched on the fact that like I did better in high school the first couple of years, but then afterwards, I was surprised when you open the envelope. Yeah, you graduated. I was kind of in that mood, but uh, you know, I have been a lifelong learner, and in some cases it was by choice. Other cases it was to um, gain more knowledge or experience to get to somewhere.
Right.
But like I say, for me now more, and you mentioned it, now when I want to research something, when I want to find out something, that it for me, that's that intentional lifelong learning. Because
Mhm.
again, if you're working a job or if you're in a certain career, there are certain things that you should be doing, to make sure you're using the right standards, current standards, things that are happening today versus and that's what I challenge people when they say, hey, I've been doing this for 10 years. There's nothing I don't know. And that's not the case. That you can always learn something. So I
Mhm.
always challenge people to don't, you know, don't remain stagnant. Don't get complacent, but to continue to, even if you want to stay in the same job or career you're doing, find out more, different ways to do things, find out more information about it, expand, that knowledge base on whatever that topic is, and that again is in reference to that intentional learning to develop more skills. You may be, say you're turning a wrench, and you've been doing that for 20 years. What about looking at the different aspects of whatever that career path is? How do I get to the next level? Maybe you don't want to go to the next level, but I encourage people to continue to expand that knowledge base, and whatever that takes, whatever, like Dave said, even to start our podcast. I watched a lot of YouTube videos, and that's one bonus to social media today, that anything you need, anything you want. And like you said, you mentioned, learn how to use a library. You can go on YouTube to figure out how to, because, that's not a normal thing anymore. You very rarely hear people say, hey, I'm going to the library to get books, because that is not a common occurrence. So yeah, something as simple as that. The information is out there, and you taking that time to go find it, to research it, to dig it up, to review it or look at it. That's that intentional lifelong learner. I just imagine, or I couldn't imagine going into something and not having done some pre work, or research on a topic that I'm not familiar with, or an area that don't have the experience with. So and like I said at the very beginning, most of us are doing some form of learning, and like Dave said, whether it's formal or not, the idea is that you're gaining some knowledge that you didn't previously have, or you're just expanding on knowledge that you had. So
Yeah,
what else do you think about lifelong
yeah,
learning,
Joe.
Dave?
And again, you bring up some valuable points of, formal versus informal, career advancement. And, we can think about it if we look at it from a professional development perspective. There is that involuntary learning, like in the military, where you have to complete basic training. You have to go through your tech school, your trade school. Then once you get to your first first base, you have to continue that education,
Right.
usually either through self-paced work with a time frame to complete it, or directed learning. So there's that formal aspect, and that can be true in anyone's jobs these days. You get there and there's a required program to follow, whether it's new employee onboarding, whether it's maybe job specific OJT, on the job training that you have to follow, or
Right.
maybe
Yep.
your personal or your professional development is actually something you do on your own. like I'm pretty much self-taught with some of the word processing and spreadsheet applications and slide presentations. I'm pretty much self-taught for a majority of my life on those applications. And I would seek out peers and colleagues to learn more. And I would pick some things up on, during classes
Right.
on how to do better. And then again, a lot of it was, hey, I'm going to look something up online at work to figure out how to do this function or this formula or to make this transition from one slide to the next better.
Right. Yep.
So we're doing these things on a regular basis,
Yep.
or what's the proper wrench or hammer or saw to use. I I learned a valuable life lesson many years ago when I was remodeling our kitchen. We had a breakfast bar on our island, and we decided, yep, we're gonna chop that thing down and just make a big island. And I did it, but it took me a couple of tries. I tried one saw type and it didn't work, and I took another saw and
Right.
that one didn't
Yeah.
work. And finally, I took a chainsaw to it. Believe it or not, I took a chainsaw to the countertop in our kitchen, and it worked. It took that countertop down beautifully. But again, hindsight being 2020, if I had done a little bit more research, I wouldn't have been
Yep.
left with the mess that it made. The tool got it done, but it wasn't necessarily the
Right.
best tool for the job. So again, that lifelong learning, whether it's experiential, like, wow, I guess I won't take the chainsaw to my kitchen again. Maybe I should choose a saw that's not going to make as much of a mess. I could have done a little bit of research and found that out and saved myself a lot of heartache on the cleanup phase. So lifelong learning can be a hobby, it can be a profession, it can be for professional development or even personal development. We can think of hobbies like I like to draw. I still go online and watch videos and talk to people who draw to learn their techniques and different things. To, oh,
Right.
that's a pretty cool
Yep.
way to make that look like a flower or a tree or a person, more realistic or more impressionistic. So we're doing it all the time. We don't realize it. So
Right.
to your point, that conscious, deliberate effort to learn.
And you brought up a very good point when you talked about the fact that you may look at other people doing it different ways and doing, you looking at their technique and their method. And so that's, as you say, we're doing that all the time. And it's still, that is a form of lifelong learning, because you're
Absolutely.
looking at different ways other people are doing it. In most cases, you're trying to incorporate that in your process or the way you
Mm-hmm.
do things. And so, because a gentleman the other day, we were having a conversation, and he asked me about, why should he go to college, or what's the purpose of going to college. And it's just that it's open your mind to the possibilities. You said that earlier, but it's also about looking at different points of view, different perspectives. And then, because it still comes down to the fact that you have to process that in a way that is going to be best for you.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still the idea. Education is not about becoming smarter than anybody or more intelligent. It's just more about, having more of a knowledge base that you can pull from, that you can start to formulate your own, uh, you know, scenarios and processes that you want to use. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where it comes from. Just having that wealth of information in front of you. And like you said, whether it's you're on YouTube, or whether you're reading a book, or, researching, whatever it is, you're still trying to gather as much of that information so that you can process it your own way. So, when people say that, um, I don't like to learn, or I don't like to do this, you do it every day, just about. I mean, most people are
Yeah.
doing it in some form or fashion. Like you say,
Mm-hmm.
even having a conversation with somebody else, because you're trying to see, again, how they did it. And maybe you'll take parts and pieces of it from them and then somebody else. And then now you form your own way of doing it. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what it's all about. But back to the point, with the intentional lifelong learning, and if we're looking at career development, like you said earlier, or professional development, that's more in the line of, getting a certification, because you're trying to become a, project manager, or you want to be a supervisor, or you want to be a manager. So you are going to go look for those certifications and those things that are going to help you with that. Reading leadership books, those types of things are going to help you as you try to formulate your own style and figure out, your best way of doing things. So as much as we like to think that, no, I'm not intentionally doing it, you actually are. You just don't realize you are.
Right.
And so, to your point that, we're doing it on a daily basis with everything we do.
Hmm.
So it's just funny that a lot of people don't realize that they are doing it. It's just when you understand that, and then you start to, embrace that, then lifelong learning becomes a joy. And that's, for
Sure.
me, that's what I, learned even with the education journey. We talked about this on several episodes ago, the fact that, you really enjoyed the your program, the doctoral program. And I said, if I had to do it all over again, I may not do it all over again. And it wasn't the fact that I didn't like the lifelong learning piece, because that's absolutely what I fell in love with, and that's what I love today. But yeah, that wasn't my driver, or, we talked about this before, that wasn't my purpose, or
Hmm.
my reason for getting my degree was not um, really what I should have been doing at that time. So
Hmm.
that's why, for me, that process wasn't as enjoyable, but the lifelong learning process remains, my passion. I want to
Yeah.
continue to learn. I want to continue to grow. I want to continue to develop. So, yeah,
Yeah.
just want to kind of caveat to some of the things you said.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah. And to your point, we do learn every day, and a lot of it is through communication and talking with others, whether it's virtual like we're doing here, or whether it's, more experientially, we'll say it's still experientially based when you watch something and you process that there's an experience that occurs. But let's say like you're an assembler, or in a manufacturing environment, or an engineer, or administrative support, or a cook, or a mechanic, or an artist. You're still learning in the workplace. The difference between lifelong learning in that environment, in a workplace setting, and, to your point, deliberate lifelong learning, is your conscious perspective on it. Becomes a deliberate effort. It's a conscious choice. You're more aware and in the moment. And that's where these aha moments come from. When you're doing something,
right,
you're like, hey, we could do this better by ABC. Or if I do this, it'll be safer, or more efficient, or more productive. And that is part of lifelong learning. The difference is, we're going to go back to the deliberate piece, is if you go in with a deliberate perspective to do your job well, and to understand how you're doing it and why you're doing it the way you're doing it, then that's when these aha moments become less of an aha, as a, hey, here's something that I learned. And instead
right,
of it being a surprise, it's almost becomes an expectation that you're going to be more aware of when you observe these moments, or these
right,
opportunities to learn.
right. No, that's a very good point. And that's a very good way to say it. Rather than having aha moments, it's more, yeah, you expect it because that's your expectation, that you are trying to improve, you are trying to make it better. So that's the expectation. But that is a very good way to say it, that, these aha moments are occurring, because that's not what you're thinking about. It just pops in your head that, oh, that's what happens when you do
Yeah,
this.
and we can think about this in perspective of looking for a job, or a promotion, or, pretty much anything. It's like, if you just kind of coast, you're like, wow, I got a job, or wow, I got a promotion. It's like, but if you take that conscious, deliberate effort, it's like it becomes part of the expectation that that's going to happen. You're going to get that job. You're going to get that promotion. You're going to get that new skill, because you've made a conscious choice to learn
Right,
how to do something better, or in a different way. Maybe it's not even better. Maybe it's just a different way to do it, because, to the adage, there's more than one way to accomplish a task. That's absolutely true. It
right,
doesn't mean
yeah,
it's one way's better or not. It's just a different way. And there may come a time in your career or in your personal life where that different approach actually becomes necessary. And that's where that lifelong learning piece comes into play. One of the things that I always keep in mind is something, you know, I can't remember where I read it or whether it was one of my professors that told me, but they said, there's one thing in life that can never be taken away from you, and that's your knowledge.
Right.
you
Yep.
know you acquire this knowledge and it doesn't go away. It's like riding a bike. You may not remember everything about that skill or that tool or whatever, but
Right.
it's like riding again the bike analogy. You start using it again and it comes back, and maybe you do things different than you did before and it's better or not. Again, now you're learning, and as long as you're
Right. Right.
aware, then that's that deliberateness that we're talking about.
So you touched on something earlier, that could lead to, you know, the planning phase, or goal setting, because the way you said it before, you said, so you're looking for a job, and your reaction is, oh, I got the job, versus if I've been intentionally working on getting a new job or a promotion, then I'm going to have more of a plan in front of me and saying, okay, so I got the job, but does it meet these requirements? And, does it satisfy all the things that I'm looking for, versus just having that, wow, I got a job. Now I'm intentionally looking at a specific job, or,
Hmm.
things I want to accomplish in this job. And if it doesn't meet that criteria, then maybe I don't accept that job. So I think that could be the
Right.
difference in you possibly being happy with the job you got, or more productive in the job you got, because you intentionally, applied some type of effort toward figuring out if this is going to be the right match for me or fit for me, versus, basically throwing your name in a hat and saying, hopefully I get it. And that could be a very different reaction, or perception of how you're going to enjoy this job. So I think that's
Hmm.
very important, the way that you said that if you're like you said, if you're working on a process but you have not grasped the fact that I'm working on this process to improve it or to make it better, but rather I get that aha moment that, hey, this is cool. But if I was intentionally doing that, then yeah, that expectation is already there. And so I think that is a difference, one of the big differences in, being more deliberate, more intentional about that lifelong learning, because it's for a purpose, it's for a reason. It
Hmm.
fits your master plan, so to speak, rather than just happening upon it. It
Hmm.
occurs, and then you're like, wow. But rather, you have a plan for, just like, career development. If you're going to get your PMP certification, it's because you want to be a project manager. So you're intentionally going to learn that, pick up that certification, so that it'll enhance your ability to possibly get a job in that field. Like,
Sure,
again,
sure.
versus that other person that is just going through the day, or going through their regular routine, and they discover something. So
Right.
so it could be uh, the blueprint to you getting to that next level, or to you, scripting out what's next for you. So I
Hmm.
think that's the way you said that was pretty important.
Well, thanks, Joe. Something else, we can kind of turn this into a personal perspective a little bit. Let's take it into the personal life, because to your point, deliberate lifelong learning, it does cross over. And as we mentioned, it's very applicable to the personal side of development, whether it's just for your enjoyment or whether you've got a personal goal in mind. I want to get my, motorcycle license. That's not
Right.
necessarily a requirement, but it might be something that you enjoy, that you want to achieve, so you can, I guess, drive on the highways legally is always a good thing to keep in
Right.
mind.
Right.
Or it could be just a hobby, again, whether it's a podcast, learning how to, you know, speak clearly so it doesn't come across like you're talking into a cup, or
Right.
like you're yelling in a cave or an open hallway with lots of echo, or getting the lighting right and the audio right and the visual right. There's all these things, and then what about the recording piece of it, and what about
Right.
the playback? There's all these different things that you can learn, and you don't have to learn all of them. It's just, what piece do you want to learn today? Like
Right.
painting,
Right.
are we talking about painting as artistic painting because I want to do flowers and people and buildings? Or are we talking about painting the inside of your house, like a bedroom or a living room?
Right. Yeah.
Different types of painting. And they're all tools that, if these are things that you enjoy doing, why wouldn't you want to learn how to do them better or more
Right.
efficiently, or
Right.
learn different techniques? Because why not? You enjoy it. So deliberate lifelong learning doesn't have to be about getting that certification or getting that leg up, to get that promotion, to shine a little bit brighter, if you will. It could be to shine a little bit brighter for yourself or your kids or your family or your friends, being engaged in the church. And so, volunteer work can be a
Right.
learning process. That it's a little bit different dynamic than doing something to get paid, because there's a different driver behind that. You do it for the enjoyment of helping others. And there's things that you can learn with that. What about, you can learn things from other people, you can learn about other people. So there's lots of opportunity to where, if we make that conscious choice to do something, the results tend to be much richer and much more appreciative and meaningful to us than if we just happen to win the lottery one day. You
Right.
know,
Right.
it's like, wow, I won the lottery. What'd you do? Oh, yeah, I don't know. I just went over there and paid my, $3 and got my ticket. And my number came up.
Right. And that's exactly, kind of the reference I was making, that, it happens to you by chance
Yeah.
versus you actually intentionally or deliberately working on it. Like you say, even in the personal realm, that you want to be a better painter, or you want to, for my case, I love bikes now. And so for me to learn more about that, so I've watched tons, hours and hours of videos on different things about bicycles now. So that's exactly right. It's not just about, that professional environment or that professional development, but it's also about that personal growth and development as well. So I'm glad you touched on that, because yeah, we were kind of mainly angling toward that professional development or that career development, or advancement. So I'm glad you brought that element of the personal, because in most cases, you start to develop on your personal side, it's absolutely going to overlap into your professional side. You're gonna,
Yeah.
that mindset is going to switch to, I'm always working to be the best I can be. So, you're not going to come home and, like you say, work on your paint your house and then go home and do crappy at work. It just doesn't happen that way. That mindset changes to, hey, I got to, be the best version of myself, and it's not part-time. That becomes a
Mhm.
full-time thing. And so, but yeah, that was I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think, we were heading down the path of just professional development. So I'm glad you brought the personal element back in here. So I just want to give you a chance. Any final comments or words on being a lifelong learner?
Joe, I really love the deliberate piece that you brought in to proceed lifelong learning, because it becomes less of a gamble and more of an expectation that you're going to learn
Right.
to do
Yeah.
something better, or just you're going to get more enjoyment out of it when it's deliberate. Um,
Right.
you know, I guess we could think of it as, cooking or preparing a meal. It's like, I can throw that macaroni and cheese on the stove and it comes out mushy or burnt, and it's like, yeah,
Right.
but what if I actually make a deliberate effort to follow the directions, and maybe I
Yeah.
throw a
Yeah.
little different cheese or a little bit different spice in there to really tune it up, and then it turns out really well. You're going to
Yeah.
have more appreciation when you make a conscious effort to do something and do it well, than if you just
Right.
happen to stumble upon,
Yeah.
hey, I made some
Yeah.
great macaroni and cheese. How'd you do it?
Right.
I don't know.
It just happened.
It
Now
just
you can't
happened.
repeat it. Yeah.
So,
Well, thanks for that, Dave. And I like the idea that you ended on a food note, because I'll just briefly tell you, I use that approach, with our smoker. Me and the wife have been smoking this past year, and that's exactly what we did. We watched a bunch of videos, and then we did take bits and pieces from different videos from different people. Then we added our own stuff, and turned it into something really good. So now we're like, wow, that was actually pretty good. And it wasn't by just by chance that it was good. It was because I watched a lot of hours and read some things on different techniques, and she did the same. So yeah, just want to kind of touch on that, in this out. But for me, again, like you said, lifelong learning. For me, I can't go back now. I have to continue to learn, whether it's on the professional level or the personal level. I'm going to continue to push myself and still try to be the best version of myself. And like I said, I'm going to continue to do that, whether it's learning to do a podcast or even before writing the book, all those things. Had to, mentally prepare myself and intentionally and deliberately pursue those things so that I could, accomplish those things. And did become expectations and not just happen by chance. So thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People. If you're enjoying our content, please leave us comments. And if you have not subscribed, please subscribe. But until the next time, you continue being your not so ordinary you.